overtaken. Well, let's speak now to our correspondent Dan Johnson, who is in Tam Luang near the exit of the tunnel. Dan, this incredibly complex rescue mission off to what seems like a very, very positive start then.
Yes, it's incredible, isn't it? It really has been fantastic news that's been well received, and the fact that this method of extracting the boys, of getting them out by having essentially taught them in the toughest circumstances, the most difficult part of scuba diving, the fact that that actually has succeeded really has raised hopes that there will be a happy ending for this story all round. But clearly there is more work to do, although things have gone quiet here now this evening. We saw the majority of workers leaving the site earlier, people going home to get some rest so that they can return tomorrow. But there will still be a team here overnight taking care of things and making sure that the situation doesn't deteriorate seriously. The man in charge of the rescue operation said this was the right time to take a pause.
As for when the next operation can be carried out, I can't give an exact time, but it will be in about 10 hours or so.
So we'll see those rescue workers back here tomorrow in force, probably first thing in the morning, ready to resume that operation. They've got a lot more work to do. It is really complex and tricky. It will take a lot longer. It's delicate, careful work that has to be done very cautiously. But having shown that 4 boys have been able to make it out alive and are now able to receive treatment, there is a great deal of hope here that the rest will follow via that same route. Everyone impressed with the technical skills that have been employed here by that team of international diving experts that's come together to work on this impossible puzzle, but a great sense of relief that it does now thankfully appear to be working. The man in charge of the operation this morning said this was D-Day. Well, it seems that it's going very successfully so far.
Dan, we know how large and complex that cave system is, with long, winding passages, incredibly difficult for experienced cave divers. Do we know the detail of physically how they got the boys through those passages and out to safety?
We got a few details earlier in the day of exactly what the plan was. We don't know if the plan entirely worked as they thought, but it does appear that they were able to bring the boys out quicker than they at first expected. They thought it might take about 11 hours to get from where they've been stranded to the cave entrance, because it is such a tricky, tortuous route. It's about 1.5 miles in total. Now, parts of that are flooded, parts are above water and are dry, so there are bits where they have to scuba dive, where they have to breathe using an air tank. There are parts where it's just too narrow to use the air tanks. They have to have the air tank taken from them by the divers who are guiding them and then be almost pushed through the narrow funnels to make their way to the bits where it gets wider, and then bits where they have to emerge from the water, walk for a little while before they then go back underwater and eventually reach the surface. It is an incredibly tricky journey. It takes the experienced divers about 6 hours to cover that route. Well, it took the first boys today about 9 hours to reach the surface. That is quicker than they were hoping, and shows that the method that they've been working on, that they've been thinking about, that they've been planning for, the training that they have done with these boys in the cave over the last few days, teaching some of them how to swim to start with, even to make them confident going into the water, then having to teach them the techniques of scuba diving, how to breathe with the respirator on, how to be comfortable moving in the water with the air tank on your back, with the different weighting and the way that that affects your buoyancy in the water. It's a very strange technique. Some people don't even learn scuba diving that well in a swimming pool. They find it difficult and give up because they can't get used to equalising their breath underwater. It's a very strange technique that some people just don't get used to. These boys have had to learn very quickly in the worst of circumstances. They've certainly been in at the deep end, but it looks like the first 4 at least have pulled it off, and now hopes that the rest will be able to follow them tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, the challenges, the obstacles that the divers and the boys have overcome are really quite incredible, aren't they? Dan, you've been there all week. Was the operation meant to get started as early as it did, or was this something that happened because of the weather? And I say that because I can see the rain coming down behind you.
Yes, it's been raining heavily for the last couple of hours, and that's been the overarching fear all week, really, ever since the boys were discovered alive, when the team found exactly where they were in that cave complex. The threat was that heavy rain here would increase the water level in the cave and they would run out of space, that the cavern they were taking shelter in would become flooded and that the boys would drown. So it's always been a race against time, a race against the rain in that respect. But nobody wanted to rush this, nobody wanted to make a false move and get it wrong. So while ever the water levels remained static, and they have been pumping water for 2 weeks now trying to lower it, while ever that hasn't been an immediate threat, they've come up with this plan to get the boys out, essentially by teaching them to scuba dive. But they've also been looking at drilling down from the hillsides around here. We know they drilled more than 100 holes over the last few days trying to reach that cavern, but it's 600 metres from a very mountainous landscape here that's very difficult to even find a flat piece of land to start drilling. So that's why I think with what was described as a window in the weather the last couple of days, the leader of this rescue operation said that this was the right time to go for the scuba diving option, for the boys to come out essentially the way that they walked in before they were trapped by the rising water more than 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah, and clearly that paid off. Dan Johnson at the exit to the tunnel there in northern Thailand. Thank you very much indeed. Well, as we've heard, 4 of the boys trapped inside the Tam Loang caves have now been rescued and taken to hospital. But getting the team to safety is only the first step in what will be a long journey to recovery for these boys. A team of medical professionals will take over their care, making sure they're fit and well, after which they'll need time to deal with the trauma of what they've been through after being trapped underground for so long.